Okay, so actually I want to share with you, in fact, the actual title is Navigating the Perfect Storm. Just like the name of our company suggests, Unicorn Financial Solutions. So we are not here to present you problems, the perfect storm, but to present to you solutions, which is how to navigate the perfect storm that we are in today. What we have, these are the two, every month I do a macroeconomic updates and post it on our company's website under Let's Talk Investments. Okay, so in January, I talk about 1 step back, 3 steps forward, which was my view, or our company's view of how this year will turn out to be. And then subsequently, we talk about the war, that's between Russia and Ukraine. And we continue to post this every month. If you're keen, you can pop down to our website and take a look. All right, 2022, I call it an unprecedented year because a lot of things this year are unprecedented. Let's take a look. Okay, firstly, of course, it's all started from the COVID-19, which was the world suddenly halted to a sudden stop. Right, and then the global central bank unleashed a torrent of liquidity or money to the people. So they give out free checks, they pump money to inflate asset prices, they bring interest rates down to zero in a coordinated fashion. Okay, and as now it's about the 2 years anniversary now from the start of COVID, and as the world starts to reopen, most countries from a pandemic state, they become an endemic, like in Singapore, the world, we start to open up the country. Immediately, it unleashed a torrent of spending because, with the free checks, people build up their savings, and, with a suppression of spending, now they unleashed, now I can spend money. So they unleashed a torrent of spending and demand goes up. However, supply cannot keep up immediately, because like what Kevin mentioned, there's supply chain disruption, underinvestments. And hence, because of the demand and supply imbalance, the supply can't keep up, which caused heightened inflation. Okay, as early as beginning of 2021, I've been sharing about inflation, that is going to be a game changer, and it's going to be more persistent than what the Federal Reserve at that point was sharing. Indeed, that came true. And as last month, inflation rate in USA year on year is 8.5%. And we have to go back to the 1980s to see this kind of inflation rates. So it's kind of unprecedented for most people. We have not really seen it in our lifetime. And because of inflation, the Federal Reserve in late last year, in November last year, which I shared a very interesting timeline. So Jerome Powell, the chairman of US Federal Reserve, was saying inflation is transitory. And then he got renominated on 22nd of November. 8 days after his renomination, he's changed his rhetoric 180 degrees to say that now we're going to fight inflation. Now every question that's posed at Jerome Powell, his answer is, we're going to fight inflation. We're going to fight inflation. And that's currently at the top of their mind, or at least at the tip of their tongue. Just to share with you how much tightening the Federal Reserve or the central banks are doing. In this year, the estimated year-end interest rates is going to hit 2.5% from zero at the start. Well, like what Kevin mentioned, it's still a low interest rate. It does not seem like a lot. But if you look at the last cycle, we actually took 3 years from end of 2015 to 2018 to actually get there. And this year, we're going to get there in a year. So it's going to be in a very shortened time. And secondly, in about next week, the Federal Reserve is likely to start quantitative tightening, which is reducing money supply. And at the rate of 1.2 trillion a year, that is estimated. Just to give you a reference, that is actually twice the rates of the last quantitative tightening. And at the height of the last quantitative tightening in December 2018, the stock market dropped 20% in just 1 month. Okay, and that's the effect you can see of quantitative tightening or monetary tightening. So And of course, in this year itself, all these factors are exacerbated by the war, which initially we thought would be quite a short one, but as at now, it is still ongoing, and hence it's a very prolonged war. Russia and Ukraine together makes up only about 3% of world's GDP. So in fact, to the world economy, the effect is not great. However, there are very big land masses, and usually big land masses contributes a lot to the commodities market. And hence, their primary effect is on commodity, which will likely prolong the inflation. Just look at some of these metrics or indicator. So let's say Russia is the second largest oil producer. Okay, and Ukraine is also known as the breadbasket of Europe. They produce about 30% of global wheat and 70% of global neon, which is a key input to make semiconductors cheap, and 15% of nitrogenous fertilizers. So they produce a lot of commodities, and if they go into a war, the countries will produce a lot less of all this and might not even be able to sell. Like in Russia, they were sanctioned. And hence, that will further deplete the world commodity and heighten the inflation. So the worry was previously I said inflation, which will actually cause monetary tightening. The effect of inflation on asset price, say technically, is on the denominator side. Okay, so that was actually the concern. So market has sold off after November last year, when the Federal Reserve said they're going to be raising interest rates. However, now people has the second fear, which is on the right side. The concern that we may be tipping increased interest rates so much, and together with inflation, to tip that to a recession. And that affects the asset price on the numerator side. So if both sides will have a way down the asset prices, and hence it causes a more difficult, I would say, equity market or generally asset price in this year. Let's take a look. If you talk about the MSCI All World Index, which is a reference for global stock market, from the start of the year, it's down 13%. If I look at a growth company, I use NASDAQ as a reference, it's currently down about 21%. And if you look at the faster growing company, represented by this ETF, that is famous for it, the ARK Innovation ETF, is currently halved just from the start of the year, which is about 4 months. So there's a pretty rapid decrease in asset prices just over a very short space of time. Now, so in Unicorn, we actually have a macroeconomic indicator. And we have a 4 seasons investing. So we have a springtime, which will be the best time to be investing. And then we have summer, autumn, and winter. Winter generally represents a recession. So where are we now? Okay, our macroeconomic indicators tells us we are currently in the autumn season. Well, and there's a risk, we might be approaching winter. Let's look at some indicators that is within our model. One of it, which is the yield curve inversion. So if you see the gray bar, this represents from 1960s to today, all the times of recession. And actually plot down the red dots. Okay, the red dots were times when there's an inverted yield curve. And you can see that for most of the time, almost for all except one, since 1960s, all the recession were preceded by an inverted yield curve, which means it's a pretty reliable indicator, except one in the early 1960s, where the yield curve inverts, but the recession did not happen. So it's something we got to pay attention to. And recently, about a month ago, the yield curve actually inverted, as you see here. But it was a very short space of time, probably like a few days. And hence, it's something we got to take note of. Secondly, another indicator we look at is a composite leading indicator. That's published by the OECD in Europe. If you look at the two blue bars, okay, that represents the last two economic crises. The one on the left is the dot-com crisis. The one on the right is the Great Recession or the subprime crisis. If you look at the red line, okay, prior to both crises, what do you see? The red bar turned down, okay, which means the economic growth, the leading economic growth indicator actually slowed down. Although there were times other than that, we call it false positive, where it turned down, but it did not create a recession. But it means we got to pay attention again, because recently, the composite leading indicator has also turned down. Of course, a lot of it is also due to supply chain disruption. Okay, so I'm sharing with you some of things that we see. Of course, these are not the only two indicators. Yeah, so the two of the indicators in our macroeconomic model, yeah, which now give us a heightened risk of a recession, which means we need to take note of it. Well, so far what I've shared with you are kind of the analysis of the situation. Next, I'd like to share with you strategies, yeah, which is what we are here for. Unicorn Financial Solutions, to find solutions for all of us. I'd like to start with this, So in the middle of it, what do you see? Okay, this thing is called yin and yang. Okay, it means seemingly conflicting forces could in fact be complementary. So if you look at what's around it, these are called the external economic conditions. You could have time of booming time, inflation, recession, liquidity, ample liquidity, lack of liquidity, interest rate high, interest rate low. Well, all of these are the external economy, which you and me have got no control over. These are the situation we face. However, if we view all these things as conflicting, something that is going to harm us, then our pain is going to persist. Yeah, because the more we resist, the more we persist, the more the pain will persist. Hence, what's important is to look at the yin and the yang. Okay, how we can complement such forces, and as it changes, how to complement it. So I share two parts to it. Okay, the first part is portfolio positioning. And as asset market always look forward, they always progress ahead of the current economy. It will be too late if we only react. And hence it's very important we stay ahead 2 to 3 steps to position for you, how about the portfolio before the actual conditions unfold. This I will share a bit later on. But that's the second part of it. Because a lot of people could have a strategy and they can't execute on a strategy because of emotion obstacles. And hence it's very important as well to have the right mental model. What is mental model? Mental model is the lens through which we see the world. Again, I'll bring you through this. But let me share with you an example. This example is one of the most successful hedge fund manager in our era. He's called Stan Druckenmiller. If you don't know him, and if you know George Soros, he's the top general of George Soros. And just to share with you his investment track record, he has a 30-year track record, unbroken, never lost money, and averaged about a 30% per year return. So that's spectacular results. And he shared what he did during the dot-com era. So the dot-com, as you know, a lot of companies were selling at ridiculous pricing, and hence he got out of it. But still, every day when he goes to work, he sits in the same room as the rest of his colleague. Yeah. So at the time, so you could hear his colleagues saying, I'm making 30% gain, 40% gain. And he says, there's a devil and an angel on his shoulder. And he has always listened to the angel. But as this prolongs, one day he could stand it no longer, and he starts to listen to the devil. He picked up his phone and made a phone call to buy the companies which he sold, the dot-com companies. And in his words, he said those were like a couple of hours before the dot-com crash. That phone call lost their portfolio $3 billion 20 years ago. And he said, what has he learned? And he said, I've learned nothing. All these things I've known and studied many years ago. And yet, I still succumb to this mistake. And bear in mind, this is one of the most successful hedge fund manager in our era. How about laymen like you and me? So a lot of people think too lowly of this mental model, because it is at least half as important, or if not even more important, than the portfolio positioning. This part I will share a bit later on as well. Okay, let me go to the first part, portfolio positioning. I think there are two probable scenarios. The first one is what I documented in 1 step back, 3 steps forward, which you will see the car here, it managed to halt just before it hits the tree in front. Or maybe it looks more like a cactus, okay? So it managed to halt. What this means is the Federal Reserve, So now they're using their words, to, and probably at the front part of the action, to be able to calm inflation, by being very hawkish, which means to saying that they will tighten monetary policies aggressively. Hopefully, this will bring down demand. Because you have to understand that the current inflationary situation, the Federal Reserve has got no control over the supply side. So supply is a shortage. What they can do to bring down inflation is to lower down demand or to destroy demand by heightening the interest rates. So I think what they're trying to do is to heighten it enough in the first half of the year. Remember, end of this year is the midterm election. And I would think it will be the interest of both the president and the central bank, to make sure they don't heighten interest rate enough into a recession. So this was the start of in the earlier of this year, my more probable scenario. However, there came the war. And as I shared with you earlier, the war is an inflationary war. Okay, so it's going to create inflation, because these two countries are major commodities producer. And hence now, I think now our probability will be skew more to the one on the right, which is the Federal Reserve can't step on the brake fast enough and the car actually crashed into the wall, like what you see on the right side. Okay, so let me drill a bit further into this. Okay, so where are we now? Okay, this is an investment clock, as you see on the right side. Okay, so there are 4 seasons. Okay, you can see recovery, boom, slowdown, and recession. This actually maps into our 4 seasons. Okay, recovery maps into spring, boom is summer, slowdown is autumn, recession is winter. As I shared with you, we're currently in the autumn season, which means we're in the slowdown season. And if you look at it, decreasing interest rates, decreasing share prices, and that's currently what we are seeing today. So in my view, we are in a slowdown. Okay, in the actual world, it's not as perfect as this. If it is, investment would have been very easy. So a lot of times we have to make the most calculated guess where we are. I think we are in summer. We are in autumn, which is slowdown. Okay, and that's the first scenario. So that what the first scenario mean is the Federal Reserve is able to prevent a recession. That means it slows down the clock such that it can remain in the autumn season for a longer period, which means in the slowdown period. And in this slowdown period of the quadrant, what are the good assets to be in? Okay, I'll share with you a few. Okay, one is short-term bonds. In our allocation, that is kind of represented by the cash that we have, which is a very, we call it dry powder or safe assets. That earns you some interest, but the prices don't fluctuate very much. And beyond that, what you're looking at is high-quality assets. And that's also what we've been getting in. We have never been in the hype and the fluff assets, which I think a lot of, I'll say, people who look for excitement were in those assets. But we never wanted to participate in those. So we tend to keep the assets in our portfolio, to high quality. And hence we've been positioning for the slowdown. However, now, if we think the probability of a recession or the car crashing into a wall is heightened, we need to also start looking into positioning or started thinking about it at least, to position for a recession. And what are we doing? In a recession, the first and foremost assets, as you see at the 3 o'clock area, is actually long-term bonds. And that's currently the investing committee is looking into, to be looking into a longer duration bonds. Yeah, because these assets in the recession, when the Federal Reserve reduce interest rates, will tend to perform very well. After that, we look at growth companies. Why? Why do growth companies perform well in a recession? Because you have to understand, in a recession, economic growth slows down. But growth company, or to be precise, structural growth companies, do not rely on economic growth to be growing their earnings. And hence, even in recession times, they still have the chance of growing their earnings through a recession. And that makes them a good candidate to be in during a recession time. Okay, so this is just to share with you how we are positioning now and what kind of assets are we looking into positioning as we navigate, between that of a slowdown and a possible recession, so that we can stay, our portfolio can stay resilient for all of us. So I've covered the portfolio positioning. Next, I'd like to move to the mental model. And I'd like to play 2 games with you. So I hope you could participate with me. Okay, the first game, okay, just go with your initial reaction, okay? Don't think too much. What do you see? Okay, you can type down in the chat group, what do you see? And I'll share with you what it represents. Okay, some people might see a rabbit. Some people might see a duck. Okay, so from this research, okay, it's not done by me. Okay, I got this research. So people who sees a duck, okay, are generally more artistic and creative people. People who sees a rabbit are generally more logical and factual people. Well, you may ask yourself, is this a correct prognosis for you? Second game, which ball is larger? The one behind or the one in front? I'll pause a while, you can type your answers down. Okay, it's very interesting. Okay, factually, both balls are of the same size. But our illusion could tell us, some people will tell us, could tell yourself, the one at the back is larger. If it is for you, that means you are more of the leadership type, those who like to be in front, making decisions at a front line. If you see the ball at the front is larger, you are more the type who will like to be behind the scenes. Okay, yeah, being the advisor to people. Now, what am I trying to illustrate? Okay, these 2 pictures is the same for everybody. But what you can see is different people have a different answer. Why? Because all of us look at this world through our lenses or our mental model. And hence the same picture can have different answer. And none is right and none are right and none are wrong. And that's how we also view the investment world. Again, none are right and none are wrong. But there are wise and unwise. Wise means that perception helps you make money. Unwise means that perception helps you lose money. So we are not debating right and wrong. We're only debating wise and unwise. And of course, we want a wise perception. So I'll share with you 3 things. The first thing, make price your dates. Make value your mates. What do I mean? Okay, when you're dating your boyfriend or girlfriend, okay, what is your primary objective? Your primary objective is to make sure this is the right mates for me, right? Right. Similarly, with investments, at that time, you look at the price. Is this the right price for this investment? So you got to make that assessment. Am I going to buy? Am I not going to buy? However, okay, those who are married, after you got married, do you turn around on your bed and look at your wife or husband, wondering, is this still the right man or woman for me today? If you do that, I can assure you one thing is going to happen quite soon. Which means one day you wake up and think, okay, I think this is not for me. Because you have ups and down day. What this means in investments, if after you get married to your investment, after you bought it, and you still look at the price every day, it's very soon one day you're going to divorce your investments due to noises. So once you've decided to get married to your investments, which means once you've bought your investments, your company, you should start to give price a lot less emphasis and to give value a lot more emphasis. Like in a marriage, to grow in your marriage, not to keep assessing anymore. Okay? And what does that mean? Okay? Let me share with you what's price versus value first. Okay, that's the three $10 notes that we see. 1967, the Orchid series. Okay, it seems like a long time ago. Okay, 1984, we have the Ship series. And 2017, we have the President series. The same $10, that's price. The value is what you can buy with it. Okay, 1967, okay, I've never experienced this because I'm only born a decade after that. A $10 of Orchid notes can buy you a trolley load of groceries. Okay, the Ship series, the same $10 can buy you half a trolley. Today, 2017, it buys you that amount. Okay, that's not today. Okay, I go with my wife to Cold Storage. What can $10 buy me? I don't even need a trolley. I can carry it in my hand. 3 packets of blueberry. That cost me more than $10. Okay, and that's the value, so the price and the value. The same $10 notes, but the value is getting lesser. Okay, look at this chart. If I were to tell you here, so this chart have gone up from about 1,000 in about 2017. It goes up to 1,005 and then come back down to 1,000. If you were an investor into this is a company, how would you feel? If you invest right at the start, you're not going to feel good because you're going to see your price goes up and come back down. And it seems like 3 years in vain. Worse still, if you got it right at the start of 2020, with let's say $1 million, shortly, okay, this is 30% down, okay? Shortly, you'll see your 1 million become 700,000. But it's going to be painful. But it is for me as well. But let me tell you what is this company. Everybody knows. This company is called Google. Okay? And this was its share price during the COVID-19 crisis. In a very short space of time, about a couple of months, it dropped 30%. And that's the price. And people who could not stand this price gyration might be shook out of it, who got out of these investments. But if we look at the value, which is the earnings of the company, let me show you. Okay, right at the start of the decade, the operating earnings of Google was $12 billion per year. At the end of the decade, it is about $79 billion per year. And you can see it's going up in quite a very consistent manner. It doesn't have a huge gyration. And the earnings actually went up 543% over a 10-year period. And that is the growth of the value of the company. So if you look at this, it's not scary at all. In fact, it looks very, very rewarding. A 5-fold increase over a 10-year period. Your 1 million would have become 5 million. And if you look at the share price, at the start of the decade, it was $325. As at this today, it's about $2,300. Over a long period of time, there's one truth, which is share prices will rhyme with the underlying value, which is the earnings. So just now you saw the earnings went up 500%, the share price went up 600%. Very close. And hence, if you look at this, it's going to be a very rewarding ride. Can you point out to me, where was that 30% decline? It's here. So the 30% decline, if you look at it now, it's only that small little blip. I use the analogy of the hand. So in a crisis time, most of us tend to put our hand here. And we get worried, I can't see anything. I can't see anything now. What you have to do is not to chop away your hand. It's just to move your hand out. And I still see my hand. But I can still see a lot of other things. And I'm not afraid anymore. I can see the world now. So what it means to see is, but most people in the crisis time, they tend to be, the more the crisis prolongs, the hand gets closer and closer, and they can only see the hand in front of their face. And what's most important is really to remember that a lot of these short term are noises, long term you'll be fine. I share with you another example. This was when I first joined this practice, the subprime storm in 2007. And that was scary, So in October 2007, the S&P 500 is at 1,576 points. At its lowest point, it was 666, a full decline of 58%. Well, that is scary. Okay, so a lot of people would have been shook out of investing. And they got out of it because it's too painful. Successful investing requires us to have the fortitude to hang on to our framework, because this is winter time. And as you know, winter will pass. After winter will be spring. The only thing is we don't know how deep, how long this winter will be. Let me show you. If people who has the fortitude to ride it out, even if they were to invest at the peak at 1,576 points, 10 years later, S&P is at 2,500 points, they will still have a very comfortable 63% gain, which translates to a 5% annualized return, which is fairly decent, especially compared to cash rates today. And mind you, this is someone who is the most unlucky, who invested right at the peak of the market. And 10 years later, he's still doing fine. He rode out the winter. I share with you a better news. If we can have the perception of preparing for spring during winter time, knowing spring will come after winter, and if we invest in the middle of winter, which kind of happened to be what we did, our recommendation during the subprime crisis. Okay, we made an investment, we made a recommendation to invest into the US stock market after the Lehman crisis. It was not at the bottom, okay? The bottom just now you saw was 666 points. We got in at about 840 points. If you can be getting in during winter, preparing for spring, right, that is the return you get, 206% over the same 10 years, which equates to 12% annualized return. So what I'm trying to say here is look at the value, and seasons will pass. Prepare for the next season. Even if winter will come, prepare for the spring ahead. Winter is not going to be there forever. Next, okay, I just want to share with you quickly. Why does the stock market go north over time? Because the company are growing. Let me share with you. If the company grows at 10% per year, and you started with 1 million, 10 years later, how much will your company be worth? 2.6 million. Right, that is about a threefold from your original investments. That is a 10% rate of return. The share price could be plus minus that of 2.6 million, but you're going to get somewhere close to it, which is great, right? If a company can grow at 15%, 1 million will become 4 million, a four-fold increase. To me, that is already extremely satisfactory. Not sure about you. If you can grow at 20%, 1 million becomes 6.2 million. If it grows at 25% per year, it will grow tenfold. And that is the benefit of sitting tight on a growing company. And when you have a tenfold increase or even a threefold increase, all this 20-30% gyration looks big in the short term. Over the long term, it really looks like just mini blips along the way. But it's important, again, as I shared with you, the analogy of the hand. Remember to put it further out. Don't put it right in front of your face. Secondly, portfolio approach. To further giving assurance of successful investing, we do a portfolio approach. Firstly, do not invest in just one company. Even if it's a wonderful one, we spread it out. We call it diversification to increase your chance of success. Secondly, there's a saying, money is never lost in the market. It's merely transferred between asset classes. And hence, if you have various asset classes in the portfolio, it tends to create resilience. Let me share with you, okay? So this was what's happened in our portfolio, okay, during the COVID-19 crisis. The MSCI All World Index during that period corrected by 25%. Our portfolio generally went down by between 1 to 8%. So we managed to create resilience in the portfolio by having a portfolio approach, because we understand Although it's easy to say right through the winter, but different people has different tolerance, and not everybody can ride through it. What we don't want most is people fall out halfway and have to realize that loss, and hence creating a resilience in a portfolio. Well, long term it might slightly underperform the market, but it enables you that you stay through the whole ride, to enjoy the upside. And that's we call the portfolio approach, which we will highly recommend you as well, to be reducing the volatility for your portfolio. Of course, this we need to be tailoring for different people because everybody has a different tolerance to this volatility. The last point I'd like to share is this thing called partnership beyond stewardship. Having stewardship is already a big plus, which means what is stewardship? You give someone a sum of money and they take care well for you, just like it's their own money. Let me differentiate for you, okay? So Unicorn, we also want to be a good steward, which means to take care of the money well. And our objective is to make our friends, 1 to 2% above long-term inflation rates. And secondly, to actively manage the portfolio. Okay, we dynamically manage the asset allocation. That's why we look at a macroeconomic model, the investment clock, to position in the right assets at the right time. And thirdly, because we are dealing with people's core savings, we stay away from the hype and the fluff. Hype and the fluff could be very exciting in the short term, but it could be very dangerous if we missed the entry and exit point. So we don't want to be inside. But beyond stewardship, what we want to create is a partnership. Partnership is a two-way thing. It's no longer just our friends handing out a sum of money and we manage well for them. But that is a given. Partnership involves a two-way learning and growing process, which requires, like what we are doing today, a constant communication with you. Because we feel as you are partner, putting the money with us to take care, you have the rights and you have the privilege, or the entitlement to know what's going on. And I want to be sharing with you. Secondly, to really partner with you through the market upheavals, or kind of maybe say to hold your hands, to make sure we sit tight, we get you through it. And lastly, we really want to plan for all the risk mitigation, such that whatever things that happens in your life that is unforeseen will not derail your investment process. And that's what, above what stewardship can do, is a partnership. And that's really what we want to be doing through decades with our friends, to help them to live a life of joy and prosperity, and their assets are well safeguarded. Right, okay, so that's what I'd like to be sharing. So the last one I need to share with you is, okay,